Hi, everybody. This is Matt Johnson. We are just about a minute away from starting today, but thanks for your patience. And we will probably be doing this process from the Zoom perspective, I think, as a breakout session when we move to executive session, so that we can keep the Zoom open and then move back into the Zoom main session when we're done. So it's sort of analogous to the live moving to executive session. So I do see that it is now at least 5:30. So I'd like to call tonight's meeting to order. This is the August 8th Select Board meeting. We're initially here in open session. Because it's a hybrid meeting, I'm going to go ahead and have a roll call vote. So could the clerk please call the roll for Select Board?
Right. Mr. Dane?
Aye.
Present.
Present. Right.
And present.
Right. Ms. Escobedo?
Present.
Ms. Hartman?
Present.
Mr. Johnson?
Present.
And myself, Ms. Ackerman, present.
Okay, so our first order of business is to enter executive session to discuss strategy with respect to litigation because the open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the town.
Excuse me, Matt. So you just went muted. The select board room went muted. But the chair for the HDC also, because there's a quorum of members, needs to.
Yes, and so when we move, I guess you need to also
Yes.
open in an open session and then go to executive session.
And
Yes.
take a roll call vote as well.
Okay, so I was just saying,
We're on mute. We have to go tell him.
no, I think he took us back off mute.
Yes, you did.
Okay, so what I was saying is that I, as chair, declare that we need to enter executive session to discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding 615 Lowell Road, because an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the town.
Okay. Move to enter executive session in accordance with Mass General Laws 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body, and the chair has declared this as for 615 Lowell Road, and we will return to regular session.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll
Okay,
call
roll
vote.
call, Mr. Dane.
Aye.
Ms. Escobedo.
Aye.
Ms. Hartman.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
And myself, Ms. Ackerman, aye.
Okay, and off to you on the HDC to call your meeting to order, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Luis D. Berispeiti. I serve as chair of the Historic Districts Commission in Concord. This is a special meeting of the Concord Historic Districts Commission that is being conducted jointly with the Select Board. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss a strategy with respect to litigation in relation to a property located in 615 Lowell Road. The Historic Districts Commission chair hereby declares that this discussion in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Historic Districts Commission, for which, in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, I request the HDC enter into executive session with the Select Board. I will conduct a roll call vote of the HDC members present. Peter Nobili.
Here.
Dennis Fiore.
You're muted, Dennis.
I'm here.
Henry Moss.
Here.
And Luis de Berispetia. I'm here as well.
Okay, thank you. And so now we will enter executive session for members of the public who are attending. We will be returning to open session in approximately 1 hour's time.
Excuse me, Matt. Louise, can you also state that the HDC will be?
Yes. As the roll call has been in the affirmative, the chair declares the HDC is entering into executive session, and at the end of the discussion, the Historic Districts Commission will adjourn from the executive session and from the joint meeting with the Select Board. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Not to return to open session.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So bear with us while technically now we shift into the executive session mode.
That makes me feel good about it. Hi. At the head of the table.
of matters first, but we will get to you very quickly. Yeah. I mean, they're very short, sort of perfunctory things that we have to do. Okay. All right. I'm going to call the meeting back to order. Here we are now in open session of the August 8th Select Board meeting. And we're reconvening at approximately 6:55 in open session. And we'll just begin with the consent agenda. Could I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve the consent agenda. Second.
Okay, second from Ms. Escobedo. And okay, let's see.
Any
We all in favor? Aye.
Okay, great.
Thank you. I don't think we have a town manager's report this week. I did talk to acting town manager, the fire chief,
Judge.
Tom Judge.
Tom Judge.
And he reported a couple of things to me but all is well in the town. And then as from the chair's report too, it's a quiet week. So I think that we can just move straight to our next agenda topic, which is the Minuteman National Historic Park Development Update. And I believe we have Superintendent Monteleone here to speak with us. And so please introduce yourself and tell us about this wonderful project.
And pull the microphone way up.
Yeah, it has to be like 6
near
inches
you
away.
because
No, closer.
these are very,
Believe it or not. Yeah,
very
you can put it on the
directional.
side or something like this, yeah. Okay.
Good. Does that
we don't
work?
have microphones in our meetings.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me here. So my name is Simone Monteleone. I'm the superintendent for Minuteman National Historical Park. And I'm here to give you an update on the Great American Outdoors Act project that the park is a recipient of for fiscal year 2022. So I believe you have in your packet a short presentation.
And Mike, is there any way to show that on the Zoom? Yeah, that would be great.
Sure.
It's a nice looking presentation. All right.
Yeah, it was great to see the map. I know that the park is all these different places, but to see it all on one map, that was great.
Yes, I find it very helpful in explaining where different things are for projects for folks.
Okay, and you can just start. I think we'll catch
Okay.
up. Yeah.
Fair enough. So on the
And
second,
indeed, it's
Oh.
on the online.
there he goes. Thank you, Michael. So for the next slide, you'll see is the map. So we have 4 administrative units that comprise Minuteman National Historical Park. So our easternmost unit is the Battle Road unit, and that comprises lands in Concord, Lincoln, and Lexington. In addition, we have the Wayside unit, which is the home of the Wayside, home of authors, our National Historic Landmark. In addition, we have the North Bridge unit and the Barrett Farm unit, which are fully within the town of Concord. Next slide, please. So just an overview of the Great American Outdoors Act. So this bipartisan legislation was passed in 2020, and it is focused on reducing the backlog maintenance, not just for the national parks, but for other public lands and tribal lands as well. So within that act is the Legacy Restoration Fund, and that is the main driver for projects that are available for the National Park Service. So we will receive 70% of that funding, up to $1.3 billion a year for 5 years through 2025, for a total of $6.65 billion to address backlog maintenance throughout the National Park Service. So we have 423 units. So parks had the ability to put forward projects for consideration under GOA. That's the acronym, Great American Outdoors Act, for consideration. So with that, Minuteman National Historical Park had submitted a project proposal that actually brought together several different project asks that the park had over the years. And that has led to our award in FY22. Next slide, please. So we were awarded $27.4 million to address the backlog maintenance, or at least the bulk of the backlog maintenance within Minuteman. There are essentially 4 buckets of projects that are within this suite. The first one is for our building and structures, and that focuses on rehabilitation efforts. And it will touch over a dozen of our buildings, primarily our historic structures, including our witness structures. We'll also be doing in our second bucket, focusing on our landscapes and trails. So that will include primarily those trails and landscapes within the Battle Road unit, the North Bridge unit, and the Wayside unit. In addition, we'll be focusing on repairs to the trails within North Bridge and the Battle Road units. And then finally, we'll be doing conservation work on our stone and bronze monuments, as well as replacing our 300 park identification signs. So these are not our interpretive waysides, these are our wayfinding signs.
So it doesn't look like the Barrett House is on this list.
Correct. So that is not part of the Great American Outdoors Act project. So there will be no work happening under this fund source for Barrett Farm. So there are other things that are going to be happening for Barrett Farms underneath different funding sources. In particular, we're in the midst of a cultural landscape report for Barrett Farm. In addition, we are targeting a development concept plan, hopefully for 2024, in which we'll be looking at how to activate that particular unit and different development opportunities there.
Because it really is an exceptional building and site, you know, the sight lines from it, as well as just historically so critical. I mean, it's the whole reason there was a battle at the North Bridge was they were trying to get to that house,
Yes.
more or less, or get back from the house by the time.
So the key for the legacy restoration funding project is for backlog maintenance, and Barrett Farm is in good condition, so it doesn't need
Okay. But like as an
rehabilitation work.
interpretive site, it's never, I mean, I guess you have an occasional event there, but
Yes, so it is open periodically during the year, so that is something we're looking to try to expand in the future years. It is primarily open on Patriots Day, and then we do try to open it again for some other events, but it is relatively limited at this point.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
They should serve breakfast there.
It'd be a little tough as there's,
No, at
be a little
Hartwell
tough.
Tavern. They should
Yeah, I
do
was
it
gonna
at
say Hartwell
Tavern.
Tavern,
So
maybe.
the story about what happened in that house,
Yes.
breakfast that was served to the redcoats to
Okay.
keep them busy.
Yeah. So just to break the buckets down a little bit more, so to provide some clarity. So for the buildings and structures, so the first phase, and that is our first phase, so we're actually currently in contracting for this work. The goal is to award our contract by the end of our fiscal year, which is September 30th, 2022. Our bids are due from contractors on August 22nd, so we'll be moving
Wow.
very quickly.
Okay.
Again, one of the big things for us, the big driver for our schedule, obviously, is the 250th anniversary in April of 2025. So the goal is to get as much of the work done in time for the anniversary, and the buildings and structures are key to that because they are prominent elements on the landscape. So that is why we're being very aggressive with our schedule. Since the funding was tied to the FY22 budget, that was not released until the spring rather than the beginning of the fiscal year. So we're being, again, quite aggressive with our schedule to making sure that we can get boots on the ground for work to start. So in particular, the drawings were shared with the Massachusetts State Historic Preservation Office through our Section 106 process of the National Historic Preservation Act, and we have received concurrence on our finding of no adverse effect. Again, our work is focused on not causing any adverse effects to our historic buildings. In addition, we're working with the Historical Commission to making sure that this package, as well as the package for the landscapes and trails, are being reviewed as well. So we'll be doing 2 groups of folks that'll be helping us with this work. So we'll be doing contractors, but we'll also be utilizing in-house preservation crews with the National Park Service. So they're called MAT teams. So they'll be doing the more complicated preservation work on some of our historic structures. So, and they'll be doing that in conjunction with our contractors. So primarily the exterior work is focusing on the rehabilitation of our historic windows, our doors, our siding, and our trim throughout our structures. There'll be some interior work done for those buildings that have been vacant for quite some time. For example, the George Hall House, which is at the corner of Lexington Road and Manual Drive, as well as the Joshua Brooks House, which is on Route 2A, just near the town of Lincoln line. Next slide, please.
I hope you aren't shocked at the bids that you get. I mean,
I am hoping we're not as well.
just that might affect the whole scope of the work that could be done. Yeah.
So we are trying to strategize. Our cost estimates, our independent government estimates came in much higher than when the project was originally scoped. So we're hoping for some favorable bids. We did have a lot of contractors come to the pre-bid conference. I believe there was 11 contractors that came for the walkthrough. So we're hoping for some competitive bids.
Well, it's prestigious work, I'm sure.
Yes.
Nice thing to get on your resume. Yeah.
Yes.
Are you going to award one contractor to do all of the work?
So for the buildings and structures, yes, we'll be having a sole prime contractor. Now, they might have subs that will be working with them for specific types of preservation work. But yes, we would have a prime that would be doing the buildings and structures.
Because it's a big contract for,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot
Yes.
of structures.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So again, it's high profile preservation work. So we are hoping, based on the contractors that did come through the pre-bid conference, that we will have somebody who's up to the task for this work. And again, they'll be working in conjunction with our in-house preservation crews. So they'll be providing oversight for all work that's being done in the park.
Right. And I also see in our packet, they included the cooperative agreement between the park and the town.
Yes,
And it does say in here that any restoration or alterations or major repairs and changing of monuments and markers and everything has to have mutual agreement of the selectmen.
But only strictly in the area around the
North
Old
Bridge.
North Bridge.
The battleground.
Yeah.
It's just better.
Right. So that, because
Okay.
that's, yeah.
So are you going to be doing any work that will need our approval or whatever?
yeah, so that's the second bucket. So this is the landscape and trails. So these are the drawings that we had submitted this summer. So there's 2 different pieces of this. So there's the trail package, which is focusing on trail work. So that's addressing some of the ponding and drainage issues that we have on the trail, including around the North Bridge. So this is a particular area that I also highlighted for the Historical Commission to give us some preliminary feedback on. We'll be doing this contract as a design build. So the drawings that were submitted are schematic design. So we will be coming back to the town with more refined drawings once we have our contractor on board. So this first submission was to making sure that the town didn't have any red flags that they were seeing in the proposal. So that way we could take that into consideration as we went into contracting for the design build. So in addition to the trail work, addressing the drainage issues, as well as reestablishing our trail widths over the years with the movement of trail material and vegetation, our trail widths have adjusted. So we're going to go back to adjusting those back to their original widths. We'll also be repairing all of our stone walls. There are certain areas where some of the dry stack walls have fallen, so we'll be repairing all of that, as well as refilling trail material where there's issues. So
But the goal is really to bring it back to kind of its original, as opposed to doing anything different or new.
correct. So this project does not include any capital improvements, no new features, new trails. It's all focusing on maintenance and backlog elements that we have not been able to sort of take care of at this point.
And so the discussions about the trail between Thoreau Farm and this and the National Historic Park, that would be a totally separate initiative.
Correct. Correct. In regards to the landscape, and again, I would highlight some of the work that's being proposed along the alley between Monument Street and the bridge. So we're proposing replacement of some of the trees that have been lost over the years, so replantings there. But again, we're focusing on enhancing the landscape and just addressing, those that might need some pruning, taking care of any of invasive plants. That's really the focus of the landscape work. We're not doing any major redesigns. It really is rejuvenating the landscape that's there and then addressing things that are missing, elements that have been lost over the years due to loss of trees.
Yeah, and well, all these invasive species, I guess.
Yes, that is a never-ending battle, invasive plants. So, and that's something that we consistently do each year, regardless of if we had funding through the Legacy Restoration Fund Act. So we'll be continuing
Or
that.
something. I forget the.
There's knotweed, there's
yeah. porcelainberry,
there's all sorts of invasive folks.
Asiatic bittersweet, my favorite.
That's another one, yes. So the goal here is to contract. We were hoping by fourth quarter of 2022, but more realistic will probably be first quarter of 23, early October or November, and that will lead us into the design build contract. And again, once we have our contractor on board, the next series of drawings would be more refined and we would come back.
Okay. But it'll be kind of a race to 2025, it sounds like.
Yes, so the goal would actually be, obviously, with the work, we would want to look to try to have it done in late 2024 to give us time to making sure that we're ready for April of 2025. So we are going to be very aggressive with our schedule, but obviously we want to work alongside the town. So if there are any concerns, that we're addressing those as we're moving forward. Next slide, please. So again, this is just sort of highlighting the sheet that's focusing on the North Bridge area and the alley, noting the trees to be replanted. That's what's being proposed, and some repair work along the trail.
Now, I haven't recalled those pavers on the edges. Is that a new thing in the corner photo, top corner?
So part of it is to help with the drainage, to contain the trail material.
And just the wear next to the.
Yes. So, and this is where, comments are helpful for us, and hopefully we will also hear from the Historical Commission as they're reviewing the drawings as well, is that if there's particular things of concern, then we'll carry that forward through the design build. So that way we note that and we can try to address it as we're refining the drawings.
I wonder what the period treatments were like.
So, we have a cultural landscape report, so that guides our work in both the North Bridge unit and the Battle Road unit as well. So using historic documentation, historic photos, it gives us a sense to guide the treatments that are being proposed. So these were done actually under not the previous superintendent, the superintendent before, who was able to get those studies in place, and that really helps to guide the park.
I mean, not that it would be necessarily desirable to recreate the condition of that road in 1775.
Correct.
It might not have been very, very nice road to go down.
No, and there's important to remember there's the commemorative element to it as well, and that's really the landscape that you see today between Monument Street and the bridge, is that commemoration period more so than necessarily the battle period.
Yeah.
So, and that's
well, and drainage and materials have come a long way since then.
Yes, that is true.
So is this the phase that's already gone before NRC for a preliminary look-see, or?
So no, this has gone to the Historical Commission. So we're going to wait for more refined drawings to formally go to the NRC because we don't have enough information, especially as it relates to the drainage elements. We want our contractor on board so that way we can have a more refined
So was there another
proposal.
project that you've recently been to the NRC with?
Yes, so there's two other pieces that are going to be wrapped into this contract that are actually funded through two different sources, and that is the boardwalk replacement, which we went to the NRC and we got approval for that with conditions. And then in addition, the reroute near the Inferrara House was another one that has already gone to the commission as well.
Is the removal of the dam in Billerica going to affect the river level? in anything that you're doing? Because I understand
don't know
that's
that.
something that is likely to happen.
Yes.
No, I don't. I have to be honest, Mr. Dane, I don't have information about that, so I'm not sure if,
Might affect the
yes,
landscape
we would,
of, at the North Bridge area if the river level is lower
Is lower.
because the dam is gone.
so that would be something that we would definitely bring up with, through the design build, is to take that into consideration. So if there does need to be any adjustments to drainage proposals, that we're taking that into
Right, there are
account.
differing opinions on whether that
Mm.
river level is going to change or not, so it's kind of complex right
That's-
now.
That's always the best, differing opinions.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next slide, please. So the third bucket tied to this project is our signage. So this phase will be a combination of contract work and in-house design with the National Park Service's Harper's Ferry Center. The goal is that this will really kind of refresh the signage throughout the park, again, focusing on our wayfinding. So these are for both signs that are on Park Service land, as well as the signage, the directional signage that is not on Park Service land. So we have preliminarily reached out to the town. So folks have seen our brown signs, kind of directing folks, North Bridge Visitor Center this way. So we would be including those in this package. We've also reached out to the other towns as well as MassDOT. So we have a signage identity group that we use for all of our signage. So obviously we want to make sure that we are coordinating with the town for those signs that are off Park Service land, but on town land.
Excuse me, who within the town of Concord are you working with around
So
this?
we work through the planning office. So that's who we go to initially, and then ask if there are others within the town
Yeah,
office that we should be
We
working
have a
with.
director of tourism. Who's the
Beth.
person, yeah, Beth, so you know, good, you're.
Okay. So for this particular group of work, we are up against a tight scheduling deadline. So we're going to split this work in terms of what we'll be able to get in before the anniversary and what we'll end up having to be installed after the anniversary, because we have to get through design, fabrication, and installation. So
This is just the signs.
these are just the signs.
Wow.
So we'll be focusing on our primary identification sign, essentially our gateway signs, and then the primary wayfinding signs. And then that will be done through our in-house designers at the Harper's Ferry Center to help us move a little faster. And again, so that's design approval, fabrication, and then actual installation. So this will be the one bucket where there'll be some elements that are coming in after the anniversary. But the bulk of the primary signs, the goal is to have that in before the anniversary.
And you probably know this, we have a 2025 executive committee, and Henry is our link to that. So I'm sure you guys have been working together on that.
Yes, I've been, as a member of the public, sitting in on
Oh,
the
wonderful.
250.
Almost all of our meetings.
Yes.
All right.
Oh,
fabulous.
she only had to miss one for her son's graduation. Her
Yeah.
mother was in town. And what was the other thing that
Um,
kept you away from us?
Oh, well, that's all right.
Yes, vacation. So we are not expecting our first set of designs for the signs until probably late fall 2022 at the earliest. So obviously we will be working with the town as soon as we have that. But that too will be on, we'll be moving quickly to making sure we can at least get the first batch of signs to approval, fabrication, and installation. Next slide, please. And then our final group is focused on our monument conservation. So this truly is just essentially making sure that our monuments are looking great for the anniversary in 2025. We're proposing to use in-house conservators that focus on conservation of monuments and statues. It'll be primarily cleaning and waxing for those bronze elements. If the conservators see any elements that need to be repaired, we would be bringing that forward. And then in regards to our stone, that too will be primarily cleaning and then repair to joints if needed. We are not anticipating that there needs to be any major repairs to any of the monuments. Once the conservators have the opportunity to come in and assess, if they do find something, obviously we would bring that forward, but we're not anticipating anything than just cleaning, waxing, and making sure everybody's looking top notch for 2025.
David Wood was very helpful with the conservation work on the bronze for the USS Concord Bell.
Okay.
And he had some people who were very expert in how the best ways to preserve antique bronze.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Thank
think
you.
also we should just move it to the town center. You know, that was the debated site for many years, and they eventually put it out there. But okay, excellent. And so, when would you anticipate you would, come back to us on the monument work? I guess and the site work that's going to go there.
So for the monument work, again, since we're just proposing maintenance, we would
Yeah,
just.
it's not changing this condition of the.
No.
Right.
We would formally come back if there's anything in regards to there's a major repair that the conservators see needs to be done, but we're not anticipating that. So it's going to be, cleaning and waxing of the bronze statue. And then in regards to the obelisk and any of the other masonry elements, they would be cleaned, and then maybe a repointing of the joint if needed.
What about the paths work?
So the paths is tied to the landscape and trails. So that's the package that was just recently submitted to the town. So
Right. Well, we need to then approve that. I guess that's what I'm curious about.
So I would say yes. In particular, the schematic designs that we provided now are sort of the initial cut at what we're looking for. So what we're hoping to get from the town right now is just comments on the schematic design to see if there's any concerns that you have. It's really the next phase of design where it's going to be more refined. That would be looking for full approval.
Yeah.
Because at this point.
And so approximately when? 2023 sometime?
Yes. So the goal is that we would be contracting in the first or second month of fiscal year 23, which would be October or November.
Okay.
So we anticipate designs probably after the new year. But we would.
Okay. So we need to put this on our calendar as something. I mean, we don't have a specific date yet, but just on our backlog of.
Yes.
stuff.
I would.
I don't
I would ask
anticipate it'll
that.
take a long time, but and it's great that you're working with town boards and committees, because those are the folks that will provide input. And it's been a long time. I was trying to find out when the last time that we did this was, that this cooperative agreement, it was definitely a revelation to me that this
Yeah.
thing existed.
Exactly.
And apparently it's, worked well in the past, but I can't recall when the last time, certainly it was before my days of working with this, that we ever went through this process.
Well, this is a pretty substantial project at $27 million. So it's a significant investment for us. It's important for us, obviously partners with the town to making sure that
Right.
we're
We
on
appreciate
the
that,
same page.
definitely. And the part that's the trails and the landscaping, what is your estimate out of the 27 million? Is most of it for buildings and only 1 million for trails, or do you have like any kind of an idea on that?
So ballpark, since we're kind of still in the contracting phase, so I would say we're anticipating a few million for the landscape, and over 10 million for buildings and structures.
Okay, great.
Yeah, Mary.
I have a question. First of all, congratulations on the windfall, and you got your
you.
work cut out for you. I have a question related to the amount of money you're going to be spending on the building renovation. And I learned recently that the town of Concord has several homes within Concord that are owned by the park,
Okay.
and they're rented out apparently. And I'm wondering, so I have two questions. Are any of these, the money's going to be spent to rehab any of those homes or bring more homes online into the rental market within Concord?
Sure. So currently we have the Gowan Clark House, which is across from Miriam's house, Miriam Corner. So that property is out right now for lease for residential lease. So that is not going to be getting funding through the Legacy Restoration Fund. So we did in-house repairs for that particular property. The second building that will be out hopefully this fall will be the Burke House, which is diagonally across from Miriam's Corner. And that house also will not be getting legacy restoration funds because that house is in very good shape. So in particular, the houses that we're looking at through the Legacy Restoration Fund is the Inferrara House, is the East Quarter Schoolhouse, as well as the Joshua Brooks House.
That's 3?
And the Samuel Brooks House is looking at either a residential lease or housing within our park program.
So how many incremental housing
Yeah.
units are we talking about?
Yeah,
So, so there's single family houses.
Yes.
So we're looking to potentially bring 4 additional ones online.
okay,
Do
so
they count-
And
I
then how many
understand
are
that-
there currently? So you said 3 or 4?
So currently we have 2 houses that are leased. So that's the Schwartz House,
Yeah.
which is closer to Bloody Angle and Elmbrook Hill, and then the Nelson House, which is closer to the Paul Revere capture site.
So the grand total will be 6 by the time you're
So
done.
And these are rented at market value? These are market rate?
correct, that's what we're required to do.
Really?
Sorry,
It's
what?
unfortunate.
Wait, did you say that's all you're required
No,
to do?
that's
No, I said that's what we're required to
by
do.
whom? Is this
Uh,
the
So
government?
that's what our authority is,
Okay.
correct?
Okay, that's unfortunate.
Well, that's, yeah, we're
No,
just
well, this
wondering-
is something that's come up, is that
I didn't, I'm learning.
we will have a little bit more difficulty. Now, I've heard that there have been some negotiations about maybe the town buying down some of the rents or anything like that.
So I've had conversations with the town, and the previous superintendent, BJ Dunn, also had some initial conversations with the town about the possibility of partnering together with the
Right.
town to have some of these available for affordable housing.
Right.
So I had the opportunity to meet with some members of the town in June to discuss that possibility. At this point, it's kind of in the town's court.
What
to
I've heard
see
from Liz is that the units wouldn't be able to qualify on our SHI
Why?
or
because-
40B.
Because
I don't know what the technical, I mean, I don't think that they could put them into a permanent status, because it's the US government that's running these programs. And so their authority, their whim, if
Yeah,
you
but
will,
they're in the denominator, so it's kind of unfair.
it's tough on us, I know.
Put them in
There's-
section, put them in
but,
section 8.
Well, no, it's just that.
okay, so people have looked into this and
They've
we-
looked into this.
and we can't get affordable units out of this. Is
So
that
the
the bottom
best we
line?
can do from a real world perspective
Yes.
is that we could improve the affordability of these new units, but ironically, they will make it harder to achieve our affordable housing official totals from the state.
Right.
And so any monies that we did spend to, let's say, buy down the rents or something on these
Right.
units
Mhm.
would actually not go towards our 40B goals.
Why not?
Because again, the units themselves, because of their status,
Yep.
would not qualify as 40B units. I mean, it's 40,
Okay.
as SHI units.
But they could be
because
still
they
a
don't have the kinds of, deed restrictions that, they don't have those deed restrictions, right? They
Okay,
couldn't be.
so they wouldn't be in the SHI, but
They
they
would never
they
be in
could-
the
they-
SHI.
But they might be
Like I said, we
affordable.
could make it more real world affordable, but
Right.
ironically, they're going to actually take us further away from
Because
affordability
they're in
from the
the
state.
Because they're in the
perspective.
denominator, I understand. The other thing I learned is that we don't collect property tax on these homes either.
Correct, because they're within the boundaries of the
the
of the national park, so and they're owned by the federal government.
So
Not a good deal. for
triple
the-
threat, triple threat.
Okay, it
yeah.
was a good try.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's painful
That was-
because we are right now at this point
Sorry.
where the census numbers are going to come out. We're right at the. So, and anything that we could get to help would be wonderful.
I just want to end on a positive note. I love the pavers on the walkway and the.
They look great. I think they look great. Yeah.
I was raining on your parade, but I love the pavers.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm also reminded, given the heat spell we've been in, a couple years ago when we had a similar heat spell, I was out with the Minuteman statue and saw this stuff dripping from around the elbows of the statue.
The wax.
Now I know it was wax.
Yes, yes, the wax protects the statue, so you do have to maintain the wax. It helps against weather, it helps against pigeons and
From my
droppings.
layperson eye, it looked like it was coming from I didn't know if the statue.
He was working
No,
hard.
from the joints or something, and it was going to fall apart,
In that position.
It's a religious artifact.
Yeah. So any other questions from the board for our superintendent? I will open up to public comment just because there is public interest, I think, in this topic.
I
So
want to thank you for coming in. I had no idea that any such agreement existed or any of this was happening. So thank you very much.
and you've heard
Of
about
course.
the shuttle plans, of course, between the towns, right?
Yes,
to
I have been
operate
part of those
shuttle.
conversations, yes.
Yeah, and so that that will be really great. We hope as we get closer to the 2025 anniversary, and we think that number of visitors is going to go way up, and so this will help improve the transportation situation, tourism opportunities, and all the like.
Yes, we're very excited by the opportunity that's coming with the potential shuttle.
Any other comments from the board or questions for the superintendent?
Terrific that you have all this grant money, and it'll be exciting to see everything that gets done.
I wish it was twice as much.
Yes, we're thrilled to be able to be a recipient.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Okay, so do we have any questions or comments from the public? If you're here and present and would like to ask a question or comment, please come to the table, announce your name and address, and have your comment. Or if you're on Zoom, please indicate your interest by using the raised hand function under reactions so that we could recognize you. Going once. Yes. Please step up. I think there's an available mic there, so. Yeah. No, it's live, so.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Melissa Salfield of Concord Green. I just wanted to clarify one thing for the Board of Selectmen. I know that, or Select Board, I know that the superintendent knows this, but some of the properties she was talking about were actually in Lincoln. So I think I would be interesting just to have a list of what these houses, particularly that are actually in Concord and that would be subject to the lease program.
Okay.
Because
That sounds great, yeah.
because, like Joshua Brooks, that's in Lincoln. The other thing I just would ask on behalf of the Historical Commission, some of the houses that we know that are going to be rehab for leasing are very historic, like the Samuel Brooks. So I think we would like to encourage you to have a sort of a priority system that they be the last to be leased, because they are, that particularly is a witness house. So that's one concern that we have. And I assume you're very well aware of the fact that the creation of this park required a number of people to sell their property or life tenancies. And some of those folks are still around. And I think just be aware that there may be some PR work to be done for those families who are still here. And now these properties are now being made available for lease. And they're not living in them anymore. And then I can just say a really positive thing. I see Diane Proctor is here, and I'm on the subcommittee for, communications, PR. There are some great opportunities. I remember when I did PR for the Park Service, Public Affairs Officer, when the statue was waxed and cleaned. We were on the front cover of the newspaper. At Lowell Sun, I think we were on the Boston Globe as well. So it's very exciting what you've got, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to promote the park and Concord for the 250th through the work that you're going to be doing. So, thank you.
To Ms. Salfield's comment, I imagine that you must have pretty strict lease restrictions on some of these units, like they're not putting window air conditioners in the windows, and I don't know, they have their mountain bikes out front and I don't know what
So yeah, so
play structures.
we do have restrictions within our leasing agreements. So for example, the Nelson House that I mentioned, so it's not in Concord, but it's within the park that's currently being leased. The Gowan Clark House that I did mention that is within Concord had been leased for many years. So I think at least within the last decade, it had 2 leasees that lived in the house. So it's the type of thing that we control with what is allowed to happen within the property and within the house itself. These are things that, in terms of maintenance, we continue to maintain those buildings. So we take into account the Secretary of Interior standards because these are all historic buildings, whether they're witness structures or they're later structures, but they are contributing to our historic district. So these are all things that we take in consideration and utilize through the compliance process as well to review any work that's being proposed for the buildings.
Okay. Thank you then for, I don't see any other comments from the Zoom participants. So I thank you so much for coming in and sharing with us. And we look forward to speaking with you again early next year as these plans get finalized for the area around Old North Bridge.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And we'll see you around the park.
Yeah.
Yes, we will.
Okay. Now I believe that we have Jason Bulger of the town Chief Technology Officer, who's here to speak with us about the 5G small cell policy that he had drafted and then has reviewed with various bodies. And I think now we're really at the finish line, I think, with this policy, as far as I could tell.
I have a couple of comments on it.
Sure. And well, first of all, let's give Jason a chance to give us any background before we do make those comments.
Sure, happy to do that. This should just be a quick update. As a brief reminder for those who might not have attended the previous meetings, on the March 7th Select Board meeting, the town manager and I were asked to come up with a draft policy that was based on some of the policies already adopted by other municipalities in the state. We did that, and on April 11th, we presented a draft copy of the policy, and the board agreed to post it on the town's website to solicit input from the public for at least a month, as well as recommend circulating it among department heads. So we did do that, and then on June 13th, we came back to the board with some clarifying questions. We wanted to get the board's advice on some direction that was required as a result of the comments that we received. So the board did weigh in on those topics. And then at that point, we made all the updates requested by the board. And then we circulated it once again among department heads to get their feedback to make sure they were okay with this now final form. And then once they were, we sent it to council for review. Council made many small changes, and then we compiled that into a final form. So what's in your packet tonight is actually 4 different documents. One is the very first.
Noticed.
Yeah. Well, I thought that was important for people who are interested to see how the policy was changed. There is a summary document that outlines the substantive changes that were made as a result of the board's direction. But there are the original policy presented on April 11th. There's the red line version that incorporates all the changes requested by the board. There's another legal red line version, which is the changes that council made. And then there's the final document that incorporates all of those changes. And so I think tonight, I think the board could entertain a motion to accept this policy and enact it in the town of Concord. But yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Okay. And now Henry did have a question.
I have two questions or comments on it. One of them was originally, there was the request was for 10 copies of the application, and that was reduced to 3.
Yep.
And it called for wet ink and wet stamp signatures on them. Is there any reason that the applications cannot be reduced to just electronic format?
We had a discussion at our draft review on that.
We did.
Right. And that's how we arrived at this compromise that.
Well, is there any reason not to have it electronic?
Because it is very convenient for departmental review. That's what we heard.
Oh,
Okay, and that we didn't need so many copies,
Right.
but the,
but
yeah,
I mean, or do we actually want
the
them to?
paper is still okay in some cases.
Well, I'm usually in favor of paper, but sometimes all that happens is you get the paper and then you scan it and put it into
These
electronic
are, I
format.
think, potentially large.
Okay, I just,
Format.
the other question I have is, there's a need for a hearing on the issuance of these permits. Does that hearing need to be in front of the select board? Or it could be
Typically
in front
would.
of the Public Works Commission? Or it could be in some other body? I mean, we seem to be getting all these like hearings we had last week about the stringing of the poles and the laying of the gas lines and all these things. Which,
That's our jurisdiction.
is it something we can delegate to the Public Works Commission? Because it really is something on which we have no expertise whatever. We rely entirely on the advice of staff for the technical features of it. And basically, we're just rubber stamping what the staff is asking us to do. And I imagine with this 5G stuff, there are going to be many applications. And do we want to really, is it necessary to clog our agenda with dealing with things we know nothing about?
I think that
That's a really good question, and I think we'd have to check with the town manager to research if there's another body that would be more appropriate to do it. Because the Public Works, I don't think it's
I don't
in
think
their
it's the right charge.
No, that
You know,
wouldn't
it's
be.
probably in nobody's charge right now because it's such a new
We could-
technology, but we could
We can-
change the charge, you know.
Yes, we
That's
could.
right. So I think we'd have to ask the town manager to investigate what to do.
But
Yeah,
I
but
think- but I do think it's a worthwhile thing to pursue,
Mhm.
is to get some stuff off our
Yeah,
agenda,
yeah.
which we don't need to deal with and we have no knowledge of.
right, I think that's a broader issue and that we should maybe address that separately, but it is a worthy discussion because I know that it is, I think for many of us,
Yeah, I
some
agree.
of the sort of least productive time that we have, even though it's an essential function.
Right.
I'd say that historically, the select board's jurisdiction has been over third parties that are doing work in the public way. And so it just makes sense, you know, that we, because it's not a public work, it's private works
And
in the
it's-
public way.
And it probably was in our jurisdiction traditionally because the select board had much less to do back in those days.
Well, Linda, you had some questions.
Yep. So Jason, thank you very much for all the work on this and for especially for the summary of changes on, that you included in the packet. Here's my comment, and you probably don't want to hear any changes at this point, but even if this did qualify, you did include in the narrative that applicants are encouraged for measured real-world emissions of electromagnetic radiation use within the technical specifications provided by the manufacturer of antenna equipment.
Mhm.
And I guess the comment or question I wanted to make is, was there a reason that did not also end up in the section under annual recertification and affidavit?
I think that, you know, as we talked about with the board before, because this was something that was not included in some of the other adopted policies that have been vetted and maybe challenged legally before, that going too far on a limb to make requirements for the annual certification could be burdensome. And there also was one change that council did remove something related to that from that annual certification, if you look at the legal red line. So that was my recollection from the board's direction at the last meeting that we discussed this at, when we, you know, we wanted to encourage people to do that, but we were hesitant to require it and go too far down that path.
And the thing is, if we're only encouraging it in the first place, we would probably do no more than encourage it on an annual
Correct,
basis. And just because we're encouraging it doesn't mean someone's going to do it and we don't have any recourse.
Yeah. All right, I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
I was impressed with it seemed like virtually all of the things that we discussed last time were incorporated. It seems like a comprehensive policy to me. I'm ready to proceed. I think this is a good piece of work and that we have needed it And I'd like to get it into place. Any other
Yeah.
comments?
A lot of work, appreciate it.
So then could we have a motion to that effect?
Move to approve the 5G policy as included in the select board meeting packet.
Second?
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thanks for your work, Jason.
Thank you.
Okay,
When does this act go into effect? Immediately?
I believe it's
Yes,
now
it
our
has
policy.
It has today's date on it.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's the policy of the land,
That's good.
this very narrow piece of land that we live on. Okay, so the next piece of business is we've got to sign for the polling places, the designation of police officers at the polling locations for our upcoming election, right?
Right.
Right. Kari?
Are you ready for
Yes,
the
take the
motion?
motion. Yes,
I
we'll
would
take the
like to
motion.
just clarify one thing in this.
Sure.
And what it is saying would be made a great deal clearer if the last 5 words in that first paragraph, the words "to the chief of police," were moved from there to after the word "delegates" at the top of the paragraph. So that the paragraph reads, "The select board delegates to the chief of police the authority given," rather than have that enormously long clause and then "to the chief of police."
That may be the statute language. I wonder if Kari
Is
can speak to that.
Yeah, Kari.
No, that's not the statute. That's actually, other town clerks have asked their select boards for similar votes. And I completely agree with Henry. That certainly makes a much easier read.
Okay, so
Great.
let's do it.
Thank you.
So I just have, Kari, the police have usually been at our polling places. Do you see any changes that this will bring about?
No, it's just the language change in the law that had previously in the law designated the authority to the police chief now designates it to the select board.
Okay,
Okay, so now
Right.
you,
Move to delegate the authority given to the select board in chapter 92, section 72 of the Act of 2022 to detail a
no,
sufficient.
right? Isn't it to the chief of police?
Yes, delegates, select board delegates to the chief of police
Police.
the authority.
Right,
That's the change that Henry just
That's right.
proposed.
Okay, all right, wait a minute now.
just take the
Move
to the
to
chief of
delegate
police
the-
and put it right after
Delegates
2022.
to the chief of police the authority.
Okay. All right, let's try again.
Okay.
Move to delegate the authority given to the select board in chapter 92, section 72 of the Act of 2022 to the chief of police to detail a sufficient number of police officers or constables for each building that contains the polling places for one or more precincts at every election therein, to preserve order and to protect the election officers and supervisors from interference with their duties and to aid in enforcing the laws relating to elections.
Okay.
I
Do I have
thought,
a second?
second?
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next thing is just a brief checkpoint on our select board goals. So as you'll see in your packet, page 132. Thank you, Jason Bolger. I think that, I thought it was gonna be a short packet this week, but that
I didn't read everything.
what I have
over.
done is I have taken Henry's advice and turned the goals document into a spreadsheet. And so as you'll see and by the way, you can all have the spreadsheet version if you wish, that you know, you can, because you can sort by any of the criteria however you wish, you know, mess with the things. But one of the things, though, and this is just slightly earlier version than my very latest version that's in the packet. But one of the things to say is Q1, Q2, et cetera, does not represent the fiscal quarters of the town. It represents the 3-month period of the select board's year, which effectively begins after town meeting and ends at the next town meeting. So in other words,
So it's
May,
earlier.
June, July, that's right. May, June, July is the first 3 months of our term,
We're
right?
late
That-
already.
And so essentially anything that we've done up until now should have been done,
okay.
designated for Q1 should have been done, okay?
Good news.
So we need an asterisk on this spreadsheet.
Well, no, I've now revised the spreadsheet. I'm not on the Zoom on my laptop, but I've now revised it to, it just literally says the months. It just
Good.
says May
Good.
through
That's
July.
great.
Now,
We're now in Q2, sort of. We're still in Q1 by town fiscal,
But we're
but in terms
Q2.
of us, we're in the second 3 months of our term as a board before we pick new
so
people.
when does Q3 start?
That would be, so now it's August, September, October, and so Q3 is November, December, January. So really anything that's like a town meeting warrant or something is a so-called Q3.
So what does ongoing mean? Because,
Ongoing means it's either something where we have a quarterly checkpoint, right? Where we could split it into 4 and stick 1 in each quarter, but that would, and maybe that's worthwhile for something like this because we'd say, yeah, we either did it or didn't. Or it's something where there isn't a milestone per se, it's a practice.
okay, so I have a question about that. So for A6 and B2, those are some of the ongoings.
Yeah,
That makes a lot of sense. We want to review any public-private partnership that comes up, and we want to have a quarterly progress report from the middle school building committee. But for A4, I think we do have a milestone.
yes, and I agree, by the way. I think you had made that feedback to me when you first
Right.
looked at this. And the thing is, I did create a new draft that reflected I think a Q3 timeframe, you know, a November
Oh,
to
good.
February
Okay.
timeframe.
Okay, so this is
To
an
look
older
at that. This
version.
is a slightly older
Oh,
version.
good. 'Cause
So maybe what we'll do is take the maybe I neglected to copy. That's interesting. Okay, I think I might have just sent it to the board as a one-way message.
Could
and-
you send it to us as a live spreadsheet?
Yes, I will send it as a live spreadsheet to the board and all, and it can be included in the next week's packet,
That's
next
great. I
time's
won't
packet.
ask any of my
Okay,
other
and so,
annoying nitpicky
yeah, so
questions.
there are
Great.
other comments
Okay,
that
great.
have been incorporated since this, just with one commenter, you know.
So what this highlighted for me by this layout
Yeah.
was determine the form of the town manager's evaluation, A1, and it says Q4. And I really think we need to be doing that now so that the expectations are set for the,
We could do that. I mean, what we have already is the town manager's goals. I thought that this is more sort of just the format of the evaluation itself.
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of determining, the goals have been set. It's really a matter of what the evaluation form looks like, is what I
Be
thought this
an open
was.
meeting or,
And then the other thing is conducting the town manager's evaluation is actually Q1 of the next year. Because
that's right.
after
it would
town
be
meeting.
May, yeah, it'd be after town meeting. So I cut that part of the goal out because it's not in this term.
Makes sense.
Great. Well, thank you for putting it together.
And again, sorry that this is a
It's never
penultimate draft, not the
very
ultimate.
neat looking.
It's neat looking. Oh, I hope it will help us actually
And I think
complete our
it's-
goals.
I like that it is like just not much more than a page and a half going sideways
Yeah,
yet.
right. There's still, I'm sure, more bullet points on here than you would prefer to see, but at least it seems more consumable.
I've got
So
a,
the, oh, sorry. So G4 and G5, as an example, say ongoing, both of them, but it seems like something that we need some maybe in those,
I believe, yes, well,
we really need Q2, Q3, Q4.
we could split them into 4, you know, maybe because it's true, we haven't
Right.
met with, we haven't gotten the regional dispatch center, and I wonder if that should be a one-time personal, I don't know, periodic isn't necessarily quarterly, right?
But
Could be
but there are
annual,
changes, yeah.
I think it should be, what do you call it?
semi-annual,
Uh, As little as possible.
as little as possible. Okay,
Rarely, is that the word you're looking for?
Rarely, if
But some
ever.
specificity is needed so that.
no, we need some specificity. This is just the way the goal was written at our beginning of our year.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then, yeah, we need to ask Mike Lawson to come back and talk to us.
Exactly.
So Mike, could you ask Mike Lawson to
He
come
was
speak with
online
us?
earlier. I don't know if he.
Okay, he was probably on to hear about the National Historic Park.
We put them to sleep.
But yeah, I think that that would be great.
So D5, review and adopt the Recreation and Open Space Strategic Plan.
Yeah,
I'm the liaison to that committee, the Rec Commission. They're not going to have their plan done by Q4.
so it won't be, it's next year.
It's next year.
Okay, so we can just say,
Next,
will not do,
Right.
you know, say next year. I think that that's what we got to do.
Right.
Okay.
And then G2, where we talked about the home rule petitions that are on file. I think we're going to need to go back to town meeting if we want to continue pursuing
Okay.
the transfer fee.
So we
And
may
it-
need to revise some of these goals, right?
And so my suggestion would be that if there is a special town meeting, ideally it would be there so that we're within the time frame of the new session.
yes,
Right now, it looks like we're not
Yes.
having a special town meeting, right?
Well,
January.
we'll see.
Let's see.
But if there is one,
It's not for the water.
Yeah, we won't have one for the waterworks,
Yeah.
at least. Yeah.
Yeah, January would be too late for the legislation.
Would it,
For what?
would it? Is
For
January
what?
too late for the legislation session? For the,
no, because,
know.
no, we,
Don't,
assuming that
I
it
don't-
passed because of all the new activity at the state level.
Okay.
We could file the home rule immediately and then it would capture this next 2-year session that they're
Okay.
about
so
ready to
January
enter.
would work.
Oh, okay, I thought it
Okay.
had to be the end of the calendar year. I mean, we need to take
Yeah.
another look at that.
Well, and there is a possibility there will be a special town
Okay.
meeting before the end of the
All right,
calendar year.
let's see what happens with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just want it on our radar because it's,
Yeah. So I'll, you know, turn the crank one more time on this. We'll put it back in the packet. We'll send out a live version for people to play with. And,
terrific.
and you know, and if you have suggestions on any goal revisions or, you know, changes, you know, that's a natural thing to do. Sure, we set our goals. We have to be, you know, accountable for the goals that we set, but then sometimes
New things have.
things happen. Yeah.
but maybe we can also just have some serving suggestions.
Surfing suggestions.
Go
Yeah,
along
exactly.
with
It's
them.
not just, right.
Yeah,
Okay,
but it's a good document. Thanks for putting it together.
all right.
Thank you.
that's helpful. Thank you.
All right. Then let's move on to the discussion on liaison reporting objectives. So Mary had brought up this question, and I would like you to kind of frame the discussion.
Okay, great. I had talked with Matt about the liaison reports, and I think they could be an important part of our meeting, but I think what's happening is we're doing them at the end of the meeting often, and we're rushed, and I frankly don't often even listen to what's being said. So I'm wondering what the thoughts of the board would be as far as making them more useful. And I'm even broadening this discussion to say, why do we even have liaison assignments? Do we need them for every single committee in the town? Because there are some committees that I go to where I think I'm really adding value as a select board member. And there are other committees that I go to that are just fine without me being there. So I guess there's two things I'd like to talk about. One is how could we make the reports outs more useful to all of us? And do we have an appetite for rethinking the liaison assignments in general?
I have
So I'll
that
start-
appetite. if you want to know, take an appetite vote.
Go ahead. So anyway, you want to start with the, let's start with the report outs, okay? Just, what do other people think about how that's, is that what you want me to do, Matt?
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe I'll jump in
Go
here
ahead.
because I said, sure, let's have this discussion. And partly it's because I feel like the most critical thing for us in our liaison reports is to identify points in which there's either the committee needs some help or coordination across the town, and where we have folks on this board who have their ears to the ground, across many different committees. And that gets to the role of being the liaison. I think we do need coverage. We need to know what's going on. And so while you don't have to attend all the meetings, to know what's going on and to share critical points of information about, hey, they took this big decision that, affects everybody else, or they're wrestling with this point. I think that those are the kinds of key issues that we should be aware of and that perhaps could change the outcome. And that's really the goal here, is actionable information, I think.
If it was up to me, I think I would prefer to do something like have a cup of coffee with the chair of my committee or the several of my committees, maybe once a month, and just have informal conversation and not have to sit through a meeting, and just have an opportunity to have, questions, and give a chance to talk about the future and so on. And actually, those are kinds of things that maybe can't happen in meetings. And we may be able to bring back more reliable and useful information in that manner, and keep ourselves better informed. I remember when I was the attorney for the public school system, I would have lunch with the superintendent of schools every month or two. And just that informal meeting was far more useful than any kind of formal communication.
I can agree that sometimes those meetings can be very valuable. I don't know that they are the whole thing. I have found that just by attending school committee meetings and just seeing sort of what they're about, I've learned a lot. Okay, so
Yeah,
I don't know that I have to be at every single one, and then when it comes to the other, I think, responsibility that we have with several kinds of boards and committees, which is to, put these appointments, these nominations and appointments in. Certainly there's a role of the chairs of the committee, but we have the ultimate, authority or responsibility to, again, kind of know the lay of the land in the committee. You can kind of see, well, where is there a need? What kind of need is being there? Not that I'd say 90% of the time would just defer to the committee, the chairs, their selection. But
Right,
Right. As far as reporting out,
yeah,
I agree with Mary that when it's at the end of the meeting, it's really hard to pay attention. If the liaison is going on for 15 minutes, it's just way too long. On the other hand, I think we've gone from one extreme to the other. We need to find that sweet spot balance in the middle. I think a couple of years ago, we had really long liaison reports, and I did have trouble paying attention to, there was too much detail. I think having 5 minutes on the agenda, though, what we've had the last few meetings, might not be enough. And the best part is when you give a report and then someone else on the board asks a question, you have a little bit of dialogue.
yes.
That's important to have enough time for that. Well, maybe we need 15 minutes total, not 15 minutes for each of us, though. I think that we need to figure out how to get that balance. And the problem is whatever you have at the end of the meeting is going to be the hardest thing to pay attention to. So
It's like public comments at
Yeah.
the end of the meeting,
Yeah.
which tend to be too little, too late,
yeah.
and a mere formality.
So when I'm,
Go Go ahead.
when I'm listening to these liaison reports, I'm listening for, are there committee process issues that we need to be aware of? I'm listening for, are there high interest or high impact issues that we need to be aware of? And tonight's was an example of something that I highlighted on several different occasions during the year, was coming down the pike.
The national park, you mean?
No,
5G.
our earlier,
Oh, yeah, okay.
yeah. I'm also, anticipating, what we might see as warrant articles. Some activity that's happening there. So it's helpful.
And what the select board might have to deal with in the next month or two. Like that's
Sure.
something, like I've been alerting the board about the personnel study task force, which is going to be coming up. So that way you get a little heads up that a group is coming in,
Yes.
you should pay attention,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera.
Related to this, however, is, we're all playing different roles with our liaison committees, and different committees require a different kind of interaction, as you've already mentioned. But I do think it's helpful to revisit what we see as the liaison role as well, because that's getting played out very differently, and for the most part, it's helpful, but occasionally
Right.
we may not be as helpful as we could.
Right, like some committees want to know about the open meeting law. Others want help recruiting people. Others are off track completely and need reining in. Not too many of them, but once in a while that happens. So they do need different things.
They do. I guess I'm hearing that having the liaison assignments is still valuable. The reporting out here, if we could bring it up sooner in the agenda, if that's possible at all, make it more interactive. The fact that Carrie gives us weekly reports has taken a big burden off of us as far as letting everybody know what's happening. But we still need to know what's happening at the committee level, not the
Right.
town
Not the
staff
town
level,
Right.
right? And I agree with you, Matt, these intersections of, how the boards are intersecting, and also letting people know what's coming up in the near term
Yeah.
and what's on the horizon.
Yeah.
Because we see things on the horizon that could be 5 years out.
Yeah. So the difficulty will be, what do you put last? And I'm going to volunteer that the minutes go last. I know Robert's rules say they go first, but nobody in the public wants to sit through, or the consent agenda, that kind of stuff, we can do last.
But
Can
that's,
we?
that's usually a 1 or 2 minute
It's like a
task.
2-minute item.
All right,
yeah.
well, what are we
save a
going to
lot.
put
It doesn't
last
save a
then? You
lot.
want to put the town
What about after the
manager's
chair's report?
The chair's report?
How about right
That's
after?
another 2-minute item.
Yeah, it's almost like a liaison report,
It is,
frankly. But
exactly. So
the
it's
thing
just-
is that sometimes there are important announcements to make or
Yeah.
issues that are in
true.
front of the town that we need to have a statement about.
In the
I mean,
chair's
like tonight,
report, you mean?
I didn't say anything, but
No,
But I'm
But you're
saying
right.
right after
You're right
that.
about
What if
that.
we had the liaison reports right after the chair's report?
No, I don't
Right.
want to.
so one of the problems is we often have invited speakers.
Yeah.
And so we want to really keep them early. I've thought about this, and I feel like
Yep.
we kind of have to have the liaison reports at the end. That's just the nature of the beast.
Then I guess it's incumbent upon us to know the goal and to keep them tight.
Yeah.
They could be before.
Well, not to
the-
have such an overwhelmed agenda that we're doing them
There's
at
another good
9:45
idea.
p.m.
That's right.
That's probably a bigger deal.
Right.
Last time I thought we had actually a very good liaison reporting session because we
We did.
had a relatively short meeting. We had time to kind of stretch out and do the right thing. And it's funny because when people aren't rushed, they actually share more valuable information sometimes.
Right, so since we're adding a meeting next Monday, that means we can have,
Well,
I know, well, we'll
That's an
see.
executive session,
But
right?
you could at least put the liaison reports before the committee nominations if you wanted.
we could. Those
That
could go at
doesn't
the
help
very
too
end.
Well,
much.
It helps a
Yeah.
little.
A little. Yeah,
I think-
that's fine.
Well, but it means that they will actually happen because there is something you need to do after they're done. Frequently, we get to the end of the meeting, we say, oh, it's too late, let's just skip them.
Yeah.
Okay, now if you had something,
Good.
I will live to regret this, I know. But,
Thank you, Henry.
but if you have something that you need to
That's
do
right.
after them, it means you won't say, well, you still can
We
say,
still
let's
could
get
skip
the.
over.
You could
Well,
still
you
check
can-
out.
You can do
Still
anything you
check
want.
out, but it's
Yeah,
less
but
likely. I
may-
like that idea.
Okay, well, that's a small, but something we could do. Okay,
Okay. In the spirit
Any
of,
other
no, in the
discussion
spirit of
points for
moving
this?
along, let's move
Yeah.
along.
okay. And then
Okay.
let's do,
The
well,
committee nominations.
yeah,
Okay, Dr. Robert Monroe of 1400 Lowell Road to the 2025 Executive Committee. Helene Clayton of 31 Black Birch Lane to the West Concord Junction Cultural District Committee.
okay. And appointments?
Move to appoint Laura Payne of 480 Losbrook Road to the West Concord Advisory Committee for a term to expire April 30th, 2025. Barbara Morse of 1975 Main Street to the West Concord Advisory Committee for a term to expire April 30th, 2025. Ryan Hanley of 77 Lexington Road to the Historical Commission, Associate Member for a term to expire May 31st, 2025.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second?
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So speaking of that, now we are at liaison reports. Who would like to go?
I will, because it's
Okay.
really brief.
Sure.
I was just at the Personnel Study Task Force before I came over here and handed out the forum, which is 29th at 1 PM at the Concord Municipal Light Plant, because they are inviting employees and the public, and it'll be on Zoom. So everybody is invited. This is an important meeting. I'd really like to get some select board members there, because 3 weeks later, they will be in front of us asking us to adopt their report, and they have quite a few recommendations that we're going to have to pay attention to regarding the personnel board charge, the personnel board bylaws, et cetera. So that's it, unless people have questions.
Okay, great. Was that a model
That was great.
liaison report? Okay. Mary?
I'll go next. The thing that I've been working the hardest on for these last few weeks has been the White Pond Advisory Committee. So I've met with many people. And what I'm learning is that a lot of the things that they're talking about now are things that they've been talking about for years. So this goes way back. Which brings up to me, what is the purpose of this committee to continually go over the same ground over and over again? But I'm still working on that. The other thing that Henry and I have been doing is that we've been talking to attorneys. You might remember that when the White Pond Advisory Committee presented their vision statement to the select board in November, at the end of it, they mentioned that the town of Mashpee and the town of Barnstable and the Mass DEP were being sued by the Conservation Law Foundation for polluting the coastal waters. And they brought up the fact that this might have some impact on the town of Concord. So we've been talking to the attorneys on both sides of that. And I think nothing's been decided, but if we look ahead, let's say 5-10 years, I think it's pretty likely that we are going to have stricter septic requirements on septics within the watershed, and everyone will have to comply. It will be grandfathered. And that's something in the horizon that we should.
Wait a minute, you said everyone will have to comply?
All
or-
towns.
Or be grandfathered?
No, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. There will be no grandfathering.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good-
I
good
think
Gotcha.
the most important thing that we heard
Yes, but
was the statement that the local Board of Health has the authority to make regulations that are stricter
yes,
than Title V.
Mhm.
Okay, and so that at some point, we might want to consider whether or not we would work with the Board of Health to develop some stronger regulation with regard to septic systems that affected the watershed to water bodies that were subject to not to contamination.
So should this be on an upcoming agenda? Do we want to discuss this, or are we not ready yet?
I think that there are many topics related to
Yes.
the White Pond area that,
And-
you know, the committee charge,
Right.
the septic standards,
Yes.
the legal scenarios.
The other thing that's upcoming, and Linda, you might be talking about this, is the zoning board of appeals will be hearing an application
They
by,
just submitted a request for continuance.
Yeah.
oh, really?
Yes,
Continue. That was,
So it won't
that
be
was
April?
48Y.
yeah,
Yeah.
It
yeah.
won't be this Thursday.
Was continued.
They just
That's a high
submitted
interest. That is a
request for
very high
continuance.
And what is this? I'm not familiar with it.
The Quarry North developer who's building the
Oh.
Cold Brook Crossing in Sudbury,
Yeah?
that's getting the 254 affordable units, also owns some land in Concord that is landlocked, and they're going to give access through this,
Right?
and they're asking for a special permit to build 6 units. 6 units. So this has got,
Well, it's a
Affordable?
subdivision plan.
it's a
Can it be
PRD. It's a
affordable?
PRD. No,
And
that's,
it's going to
that's,
have two
that's,
affordable units, but it's I think it's a total of 24 bedrooms on land that is adjacent to a well site, and that well site is adjacent to White Pond.
Mhm.
And the very comprehensive report of Elizabeth Hughes, the town planner, deals with the groundwater runoff, but does not deal with, and deals with Title V issues, but does not deal with potential concerns about the effect of the septic effluent having a negative effect on the nitrogen load in White Pond. And I don't know if there's any standards or rules in which we can base any kind of concern for that. But it's something that something we may want to think about and look at the impact that this development would have on White Pond.
So we have
The well
several
site.
White Pond issues to
There are.
go over.
That's
yeah.
what I was thinking. So we need a more kind of a comprehensive look at the White Pond issue. When do we schedule this? So I'll just put it on our backlog, and probably will end up being like late September, early October. Is that too
well,
late?
I'm hoping to have the charge done by then, so maybe we can at least get that out of the way.
Or is that
but-
too early? Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, that might be a little too early, actually.
Too early. So
Yeah.
November?
Yeah, let's say November.
And
November-ish.
by that time, we may have the DEP regulations that are issued in the conservation law suit.
Okay,
Because
Right.
that's what happened with that suit was it was put on hold to give the DEP the opportunity to issue regulations that would affect the problem that they're concerned with, which is the pollution of coastal waters.
okay.
So I think one thing about these liaison reports, we do have to be careful that we don't get into a long discussion that's not on the agenda.
No, but, yeah.
So we
but
have to strike that balance.
But this is
Don't
just
worry
a
about
agenda-setting discussion that we just had, and
No, I
I
know.
think this is the kind of thing.
Right,
And
right.
I think that the most valuable kind of discussion that we could have
Oh, I
out of
agree.
a
I'm just
liaison
saying.
report is but I agree, we don't do deliberation.
Right.
What we do is we say, this is a topic worth discussing,
Yep.
let's put it on the backlog,
Right.
then we'll
Right.
go after it. November timeframe, we have 3 meetings proposed for November, 7th, 14th, 28th, so. Now, not that we have to do them all, but. Well, we usually do, yeah, exactly. We haven't gotten out of them yet. All right, Linda?
So the Regional Housing Services held a meeting for the housing production plan. They heard the consultants' first draft of goals and strategies for addressing that housing production plan. They've, the group asked to have a second version of that come back to them before it would go out to the public. September 14th, as you could see in the town report, is scheduled for a community forum from 7 to 9 on September 14th.
Okay.
And that may be the first opportunity as select board members where we can
Really
respond,
get some
respond
feedback
to
from that
Yeah.
perspective. I mean, I know that us as individuals, we've
It can do that.
provided
as
input.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. 7 to 9 on September 14th. And I also attended the Finance Committee meeting, and of particular interest there was Christine Reynolds' report out, extensive report out on Christopher Heights. And I thought she did a very good job of giving a quick background on the project. She talked about a 2 point, remember when I raised the question about there is a cost contribution related to the TIF in terms of the exemption period. She quantified it and said $2.6 million is the relief value of that TIF. So that was important. And then she also laid out for the Finance Committee sort of the dilemma in terms of meeting the 8 to 20 units below the required 40B requirement at this point. And I think did a good job of talking about the select board had raised 7 or 8 questions, including needing to see an updated pro forma. Liz was at that meeting and had a chance to respond to some of the questions in the room, and said, you know, a decision's going to have to be made by September, whether or not we apply for the NOFA.
Wow.
So, and it may or may not be, the sewer suggestion may not be the best way to, the next meeting that she's going to try to set up is to have the DHCD staff member, Kate Racer, speak to whether it'll be the housing production plan or to us, I'm not sure, to lay out why they're asking the town for additional money and what that looks like at this point. And Liz did comment to the select board that for the town to assist with additional sewer work for this project may or may not be the pathway forward. There may be another pathway forward in terms of just putting the money on the table. So that's,
That doing the in-kind work for attaching to the sewer, rather than that, do some just financial contribution.
so, yeah, could be 850 to 1,000,003, yeah.
Can I add one thing? Because you're right, I watched that video, and you're right, Chris did a great job, and she did also mention that she had taken a look at the Rapids pro forma, and they are God, I just want to add that I did watch that video, and Chris did a great job, and she had looked at their pro forma P&L, and they are cash positive and show a profit in year 1.
Under the initial stop and one-stop pro forma that we already looked at, financial format, that what we need, that's what
So
she
she
was
needs
commenting on.
updated.
She needs to be
And you
updated.
requested an update.
I did.
But we haven't gotten it yet.
No, we haven't.
Okay.
When is that coming back to us? I mean, doesn't it require a vote from us to make additional concessions? At least that's what we're told.
I
Can
I
we
would
do
think
that?
so.
Wouldn't that be town meeting?
Is it,
They need to know the intention at least. And so I would think they're going to have to come back to the select board for the intention
Right. Keith
to
had
file the pro.
said that they would come back
to file the
because of the
NOFA.
MOU stating that the town would not fund any more money, that he felt as chair of the Housing Trust, when he was here, he said they will come back.
well, the default condition is that we do nothing further, right? I mean, because we've made the
I think-
commitments we've made.
Well, I think
and
they
we
can
made the-
go ahead with their money. The
I don't,
I'm sorry, what was your comment?
I said, I think the default condition is that we need to if the default condition is we need to do nothing further on this, because it would be, we would have to take affirmative action to authorize the expenditure of either additional funds or the making of additional concessions to facilitate the project, because they're telling us they can't do it without those concessions. Is that right?
yeah, I think the source would, I'm thinking about it now, the source would be ARPA funding.
Well, only if we choose to use it.
Well, you're right.
And we
So
definitely have.
It doesn't need it doesn't need town meeting approval is my point. Unless we want to stick to, we wanted all ARPA funding to go through town
Well,
meeting.
we did make that decision, and we'd have to change it and decide that that's what we wanted to use ARPA funds for.
Yep.
Okay,
So,
so
but,
I think
but,
that, again, not to get into deliberation,
but on that,
just,
but
you know,
on that,
this is the danger, right? So
Yep, it
we're
is,
seeing-
you're right.
We're
But-
seeing, so
but-
basically, I think that what the discussion has determined is that there's likely to be by September, and that's soon,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Very
another
soon.
discussion
it's coming
that
next
I will
month.
have to recuse myself
This
from.
year.
And that's the other thing is it's difficult for me to even
listen,
So this is an,
right,
yeah.
do this liaison report.
So I'm open to feedback on this. I gave more than
Yeah.
usual
No,
detail
well,
than
then I
I,
think we're trying this out. We're trying to
Yeah.
figure out what we can do.
just
with
because of the
these more
timeline that's
substantive-
ahead of us and
Yeah.
And
and
one
the
thing I'll
nature of
throw
the
into
stakes
the
that are,
hopper on that one
nature of the stakes that are on the table.
Okay,
is that we have to think about a plan B. We have to think about a plan
Okay,
B.
but we don't want to
Okay.
get into that
all right,
deliberation.
but,
right
okay,
I
but
mean,
So
that
it's-
isn't, that's
the
part of
so what's
agenda
our
it.
setting.
strategy? We're going to wait to hear, or are we going to put it on an agenda to your point earlier, Matt? that these
What
are
I
good?
would ask is our staff member here to ask Keith and Liz, essentially, I think they're the leads on this, when they feel like they need to come back to get a decision from the board. Okay, and then additional topics such as any deliberations on a plan B could be stuff that we throw into the mix for that same date.
So this is CHCD's project, so whether Lee Smith would need to be.
Right, so that might be it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so there, and it's likely to be either our September 12th or September 19th meeting.
Oh, speaking of that, what is happening with September 26th? Is that getting,
Yeah, Mike, I wanted to ask this, or can we get the 26th? Well, I sent a note to Tracy. I would actually expect to hear back from her first.
oh, okay, so.
Yeah,
nothing's
because
been
it's the
determined yet.
schools that came up with the proposed date.
Oh, it's not a
Yeah.
regular select board meeting, the 26th?
Well, yes, it would be, but, and that's why I made it for our convenience sake. It might end up being like the 27th,
Yeah.
and so
I'm gonna
that's-
have to
that's-
miss that.
Of what
So-
month?
September 27th.
And that would be what?
There'll be the capital planning forum with the schools.
But
So, but
September
that's a
19th
possibility. It's not
Is
confirmed yet.
September 19th already on our calendar, or is that because you have to change it?
I believe we have both September 19th and 26th on our calendar as
All right,
meetings.
All right, great.
And we don't, again, maybe we won't have
Okay,
topics. All
sorry.
right. And the 12th is already looking busy. So, but we'll see. All right. Henry.
The only other thing I have to discuss is where we stand with the 2025 Executive Committee. We now have a full complement. We have just recruited Rob Monroe, who is the inclusion, the vice, what is it called? The vice head of school. No, he was a vice head of school at Concord Academy for program and inclusion. And he has agreed to become the 12th member of the executive committee. So we now have a we have a member of the executive committee who is going to be focused on equity and inclusion. And we also have some projects that we're looking at and thinking about as fulfilling that need. We now have a total of 57 or 58 members of the committee and its subcommittees, all of which are to be sworn in and to be committee members of designated subcommittees that are now starting to hold their own meetings with their own agendas and own minutes, or will be doing them within the next couple of days. And so we're starting to really move ahead on this project, and we have a lot of very eager people who are just really ready to go on this. Some of the most most involved people in town.
It's wonderful. I have a question. A while ago, maybe 2 years ago, we talked about getting on the president's schedule and how you have to do that like 6 years in advance or whatever. What is happening with that?
There's I can say this, some hesitation on that score for two reasons. For two reasons. Well, actually, I'll give you three reasons. One is, of course, we don't know who the president will be, and that might affect the choice. Number two, a lot of the people who were involved in previous events felt that if the president is involved, the Secret Service takes over the whole event and we lose control over it. And the third item is that, what was the third one? That in 50 years ago when Gerald Ford came, it was almost a last minute. It was almost a last minute decision and opportunity that was taken advantage of. So that while I thought like 2 years ago, I should talk to some people who might have contacts to see if we couldn't get on the calendar, I haven't really actively pursued that because there hasn't been universal enthusiasm for it.
Interesting.
Okay. So I just want to report further on the Finance Committee meeting where I attended as liaison, that the guidelines process is getting underway. And then the committee agreed to a new approach for sustainable growth rate. They were all very enthusiastic about that. And I think it is a good foundation for evaluating the rate of budget growth. So I'm glad that there is a better foundation being financially, calculation being devised. And then there was some discussion of the middle school budgeting, trying to smooth out the capital impacts and so on. And of course, the overall budget issue, but that was not very conclusive. What we did do, though, in the middle school building committee was we went through, so we have a value engineering list, and it's, 50 items or so. And they're divided into groups that were recommended to be accepted by the architects and those that have been recommended to be rejected. And so what we started was with the recommended to be accepted list. And there were about $2 million worth of cost savings, things like reducing the thickness of insulation and, that doesn't affect the performance of the building, and using different surface treatments that are cheaper, and eliminating, an outdoor area that was not essential, those kinds of things. And the committee agreed over the course of about 2.5 hours to $1.1 million of those, and only rejected so far about $40,000 of them. There are a couple of pending items where more information is needed. And so those are going to be researched, and we'll take those up at our next meeting, which will be, I think, on the 18th. So we're having a second meeting. We're trying to go pretty intensively through this process. And then we will also begin to go through the rejected list and try to see whether there's any of those items that were initially rejected that we actually want to take, and try to understand the rationale for why they were initially proposed and then rejected. So, the goal is to not do things that would increase maintenance costs long-term, reduce the longevity of the building, impact the academic plan, those kinds of considerations, while being responsible to the budget, not knowing what our ultimate shortfall, if any, will be. And so I think many of the things that were taken as additional items were things that, regardless of whether we had a budget overrun, we probably should have done. And so this is really good that we're taking this extra pass on things, I think, in my opinion. But there's a lot more work to do. And certainly even relative to the 30% estimate that we have, we're still a long way away from getting back to that budget number. So that's where we stand right
I
now.
have two questions for you, Matt. For the Finance Committee, did they actually publish a sustainable growth rate number?
They will now publish it
They
based
will.
upon the methodology.
Okay, so they
Yeah.
defined the methodology, not
Yeah,
the number.
everybody agreed,
Got
they
it.
Parashar Patel put up some different options and scenarios, and they all zoomed
Great.
in on one. Yeah.
And my second question is, for the Middle School Building Committee, I noticed on the agenda, they had a line item for outreach, communication and outreach.
Yeah.
Did they talk at all about how that's going to be balanced?
Well, I think it's really meant to be informational at this stage. So as far as like where we're at, what the process we're going through.
Okay.
That kind
But it's likely to slide into promotional, isn't it?
We'll have to see. I mean, the goal is to promote the plan, whatever the plan is that the committee ends up with,
And
right?
that means
Well,
promoting
we got to see
promoting the cost and the budget.
that we
building
agree
support.
to. Yeah.
Well, but
So that's
It's the vote of the Middle School Building Committee that
Yeah.
they'll be promoting.
probably so. I think that's it.
let's go.
Okay.
Okay. We done?
Actually, do we have any, so I didn't see any correspondence included in this week's packet. Did we have any public comment? This is the moment for public comment. If so, please raise your hand. I do see a couple of hands up. Diane Proctor, I think you're the top left. I think that meant you're first.
Thank you, Matt, very much. Diane Proctor, 57 Sudbury Road. I'm sorry, I'm in Concord, so I don't have I'm not in Concord, I'm in New Hampshire, so I don't have all the visuals that we would normally have. Two comments. One is that many of us would really appreciate if the town manager's report, I wish Carrie were here for me to make this comment because I don't mean it in the adversarial concerning way. If her report were provided ahead of time, even if it's not, the mandated 24 hours ahead of time or 48 hours ahead of time, it would really help for those of us who are following the discussions more thoroughly. And if there's a way that we could do that, it would be fantastic. And I think tonight's discussion about liaison reports is a brilliant example of why they're so very important. So Henry, even though you say these comments are often too little and too late, there's mine, and for what it's worth. And thank you all for a really thorough discussion tonight.
Okay, thank you. Carlin Reed, I see you're up next.
Thank you, Carlin Reed, 83 Wits End. I will echo Diane's comments. The liaison reports are the most fascinating portions of your meeting, and I wait eagerly to hear every single word that you have to say because there's wisdom in there somewhere. Thanks.
Okay, Pamela Dredd.
Pamela, 13 Concord Green. I wanted to know, Matt, why do you recuse yourself from the discussion of the senior affordable assisted living facility?
Yeah, so I live on Winthrop Street. I'm a near a butter. I'm within the 300-foot, notification zone of the site. And so I have a potential conflict of interest regarding the
I don't
project.
see how. We all live in Concord near there. Please
Well,
stop
it's
recusing
that
yourself.
all the transportation in and out of that site goes down our street.
Yes,
So anyway, that's the reasoning.
Well, all the other people who live in the area also have recused themselves.
Well, no, they're citizens. They're not deliberating on the project. So that's why, and for some time, not just here, but on the planning board, I've had to take that position.
I wish you would
okay.
reconsider, because I bet you could be perfectly objective and not bias you. The other question is, in the middle school value engineering cut considerations, has there been any consideration of cutting out the cost of the fossil fuel generator and replacing it with battery backup?
I know that there was a discussion of potential battery backup alternatives and that they weren't going to perform in the case of long-term outage. And of course, the upfront cost could be significant. But I don't have any further expertise other than to know that that was discussed at one point and was rejected as an option.
Oh,
So
bad idea.
and I know too that there was a discussion of natural gas versus, the diesel fuel version, and I think they ended up with a natural gas option because.
Oh, God.
So but it's just the backup system.
But that is a real problem, since it needs to go to battery backup. It doesn't need to be on the long-term route that way, because the solar does generate power.
Okay,
That's a
thank you.
long-term. Solar plus battery is a long-term solution, not a short-term one.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
I think we're then done and ready to adjourn.
adjourn.
Okay, I'm just going to adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everyone, and see you next time.
Matt, what are the